Selecting the company's first target market is often a subject of debate within the senior executive ranks. So much goes into selecting the first target market and requires extensive analysis. However, some companies make the decision on something relatively simple, like language compatibility. That's right. I worked for a company who undertook an international expansion strategy. The first international investment opportunities took place in the UK and Australia. While the industries were ones we were familiar with, the overriding reason was that they spoke English. Not a very solid and analytical reason for making multi-million-dollar investments. And by the way, both investments were losers and the company had to exit them within several years. So let's spend a few minutes with a brief overview of Chapter 5, which will provide some insights into the target market selection and the modes of entry. This chapter is concerned with two closely related topics. 1. The decision which foreign markets to enter and when to enter them. And 2. The choice of entry mode, which may develop over time based upon experience. Regarding the first topic, the three components of strategy dimension are critical to understand. However, let's focus on the first two. Market segment choice. Did you know there are almost 193 countries in the world, not counting the Holy See, the Vatican, and Palestine? All these countries do not hold the same profit potential that would be attractive to an expanding international company. As we have discussed previously, the selection of a new foreign market is going to ultimately be based on the long-run profitability potential, which includes balancing the benefits, cost, and risk associated with doing business in the new foreign market. Many foreign markets may look like having potential, but there is an issue of timing. There are advantages and disadvantages for entering the market as a first mover. While a country may look promising, there may be a concern about entering the market because of its recent history. From experience, this is very true. In 1988, a company I worked for, we had identified Chile as a potential target market for investment, and we were ready to make a multi-hundred-million-dollar investment. For a number of external reasons, it was decided the timing was not right for the investment in Chile. However, by 1991, the Chilean market looked more attractive and the investment amount had been significantly reduced. We made an investment through an acquisition in 1992, and it turned out to be the right decision. Timing is very important. Customer relationships. Most of the focus is on the customer relationship expanding into a new foreign market. While that is important and should not be discounted, a company should not overlook its relationship with suppliers. Expanding into a foreign market can prove to be more successful if it can be done in conjunction with a company's suppliers. It is not uncommon for a company to look at potential market to see if their suppliers are already operating there or in a nearby market. This allows the company to have some confidence in the decision to enter a new foreign market. As an example, the company I worked for was contemplating an investment in a wireless opportunity in Argentina. One of our U.S. suppliers had a significant presence in the country and agreed to be our supplier should we enter the market. This provided a higher degree of confidence for making the investment decision. There are no right decisions here, just decisions that are associated with different levels of risk and reward. Clearly, the most attractive markets tend to be those that are politically stable and have free market systems, yet those markets often do not contain the greatest reward. There's a lot to be said for initially selecting markets that provide a higher probability of success, but a lower rate of profitability. As the company learns from its investments in foreign markets, it will leverage this learning to start making investment decisions related to entering higher risk, higher reward markets. One of the most effective ways to enter a new foreign market is to examine the best mode of entry. This chapter presents several modes of entry to consider. However, there is a need to break them into different classifications. First, let's look at exporting and licensing, both of which are more focused on the manufacturing sector. Exporting. Most manufacturing companies will begin their global expansion as an exporter of a product or products to a foreign market where they know payments will happen. Clearly, starting off with exporting to a foreign market offers two advantages. One, avoids the cost of establishing manufacturing operations in each target foreign market. And two, provides an opportunity to gain knowledge and experience in product localization. Through manufacturing the product in a centralized home country location and exporting to a foreign market, economies of scale allow the product to be sold more price competitively. A good example would be Japanese automakers who initially exported but now produce a number of vehicles in the U.S. A key disadvantage to exporting could be logistics and cost of transportation from the host country to the foreign market. This is one of the driving reasons why companies with extensive global operations will manufacture products in one location capable of exporting to other markets within a specified region. Exporting is usually the first step, but within a relatively short period of time, a company will move to another mode of entry for serving its expanding global presence. Licensing is an arrangement where the home country agrees to allow intangible property, like a trademark, to be used by a foreign company, who agrees to abide by strict rules as to how it does business. The home country will assist the foreign country in establishing its business under the guidelines set by the home country. The home country receives a royalty payment based on an established percent of revenues. There are advantages and disadvantages of the licensing. It is expected the home country will have minimal financial exposure under this mode of entry. One of the most well-known examples is Coca-Cola, who has licensed its famous trademark to clothing manufacturers worldwide. One thing to remember, normally speaking, the home country does not have a permanent presence in the foreign market. This is due to the lack of direct investment in the foreign market under exporting and licensing. Franchising is very similar to licensing, with licensing being more product-focused while franchising is more service-oriented. Like licensing, the home country agreed to sell its intangible property, like a trademark, to a foreign company who agrees to abide by strict rules as it does business. The home country will assist the foreign company in establishing its business under the guidelines set by the home country. The home country receives a royalty payment based on an established percentage of revenues. A key difference between franchising and licensing is the level of presence in a foreign market. Best examples of franchising would be many of the fast food restaurants like McDonald's, Starbucks, etc. However, did you know that 2 Men in a Truck use franchising as a mode of entry into the global business arena and now has over 380 locations? Joint ventures is another form, as a home company may decide to either enter a foreign market through a joint venture with two or more otherwise independent companies. Now, these companies could be from outside of the foreign market, or it could be a combination of companies from inside and outside of the foreign market. Again, using my Argentina example, the joint venture considered 2 U.S.-based companies and 2 Argentine-based companies. This arrangement was dictated by the requirement of the investment opportunity. However, the percentages were not well defined, so the 2 U.S.-based companies owned 55% of the Argentine company. While there was a requirement to have a diverse collection of investors, there were other motivators as well: risk and reward sharing, technology sharing, supply chain, and political risk. Acquisition is the first step for expanding a company's international presence and has to be undertaken very carefully. Most of the time, the acquiring company does not have the organizational knowledge to operate or manage an operation outside of its domestic market. Imagine as a first international expansion investment, a Minnesota company acquired a company in Brazil, over 6,000 miles away, at a 3-hour difference in time zone, and speaks another language, makes managing this foreign market a potential organizational nightmare. An acquisition strategy is best after the company has gained knowledge organizationally from operating in several different foreign markets. Finally, greenfield or startups. and wholly owned subsidiaries. This is the least likely mode of entry as a first investment into a foreign market. There are some advantages to having 100% of the ownership of a foreign operation. This allows the home company to control all aspects of the company, especially if it has a technological competitive advantage. Additionally, it allows the home country to dictate global strategic coordination and to gain localization knowledge and economies of scale more rapidly. However, generally speaking, pursuing this mode of entry is the most expensive as the home company bears the entire cost of establishing the new operation in a foreign country. That is just the financial cost. There is an organizational cost as well, as there is a need to bring together divergent cultures and poses many risks due to misunderstandings and miscommunications due to the cultural differences. The choice of mode of entry is easy and not so easy, as each one has their own advantages and disadvantages. Furthermore, each mode of entry may not be appropriate for the home company depending upon the industry it operates in. For example, companies I worked for could only pursue the mode of entry of acquisition or greenfield. A company like Polaris could start with exporting, and then gaining global knowledge and experience, it could develop the organization. Then the next step could be establishing manufacturing facilities overseas. Making the decision as to the target markets and mode of entry requires research and analysis by the domestic company. As I explained, one of the companies I worked for had established an international subsidiary charged with the goal of developing and executing a global expansion strategy. For the first several years, the only strategy was to make investments in foreign markets without a lot of thought, thus the investments in the UK and Australia. Every month, investment proposals were presented, and some made financial sense, but would not have been organizationally appropriate and would have proven to be operationally challenging. Finally, after about 3 years of struggling to find the right global expansion strategy, we finally reached the strategy focus. The change came about for two key reasons. We had gained more knowledge and experience of operating in foreign markets, and we had incorporated more executives with global operating experience. This was important as the organization was now more in line with the markets we were operating in. First, it was determined which industry we would pursue globally, wireless communications or cellular back then. No more fiber optic network build in India or telecommunication services in a large-scale construction project. The focus is wireless and wireless only. Second, we narrowed the focus to Western Europe and Latin America, playing off our domestic growing global relationships and our international exposure. Again, this geographical focused resources were better utilized across the board. And finally, it was decided that no minority investments would be taken as it did not fit our strategy. All investments required the company to minimally have involvement in the strategic direction of the foreign company. The preferred choice was to have operating control of the foreign company, but this was not always possible. This strategy was successful, as within 10 years we had investments in 15 countries, spanning Europe, Israel, Latin America, and Australia. These operations generated over $14 billion in revenues. Some of the operations were acquisitions, but most were greenfield opportunities. Some were 100% wholly owned. Some were joint ventures where we had majority control, and others were jointly controlled. A global business strategy will be successful when it's well thought out, organizationally sound, and flexible as needed.